Hi, it's Michael Weber from Porchlight Music Theater. I'm so excited to be here with you to talk with Jay Torrence, the author of Burning Bluebeard, and Halena Kays, the director of the piece. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about one of my favorite pieces of theater and what is something that has become a holiday tradition for me as well as thousands of other people. Thank you for being here.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
thank
having
you.
us.
Yeah.
I'd like to go right to the very beginnings. This is a very unique piece of theater that certainly must have been inspired you, Jay, to go, I'm going to write this story about Christmas. How did that happen? How did it all come to start?
For me, it was a forgotten piece of Chicago history that I hadn't heard about. And so the story itself grabbed me for sure. I had heard of the theater downtown that exists on the actual spot of the old Iroquois Theater. And apparently I don't know which office, a friend of mine who's a theater artist saw in a theater office the burnt out photograph of the old Iroquois Theater. And when he saw that, he brought that up to me and asked me if I had heard of any of the historical events of the Iroquois Theater burning down, and I hadn't. So I just briefly looked into it, and the very first thing I learned about in the story was the story of Nellie Reed, who was an aerialist in the show that was Mr. Bluebeard that was playing in the Iroquois. Anyway, the story was just this insane, romantically beautiful, horribly tragic story of an aerialist involved in this fire that occurred in downtown Chicago in the turn of the century in this gorgeous new theater. Anyway, there's so much drama to that story. It pulled me in. Her as a character pulled me in, and I'd never heard of it, and then couldn't find much about it and much about her. So I kind of got that bug to like a history bug to learn about the story and to figure it out and to hear more. So that was kind of the germ essence of it. And I get fascinated by Chicago's history, especially lost little pieces of history that involve artists, specifically theater artists and circus artists. So that was like the hook for me. I wanted to figure out what happened, how it happened, and who these people were. So
Yeah. Halena, as the director of the piece, and your handprint is so much all over this piece. When did you come into the process, and what was your entrance into it?
Yeah, Jay, I don't remember how we first talked about it, but the way the play was made, in a lot of ways, or a lot of the exploration around the play was an ensemble journey. I don't know how much, Jay, I think you had a few pieces written for you had the idea, a structure, and a couple of pieces that you knew you wanted in the script ultimately. And at that point, it's like the luck of being able to work with the people that helped build the show. Then we can already start reaching out to performers to come and start to explore and workshop. And so I think that's what's so unique. Tons of people's handprints are all over this, tons of people's points of view. And then what Jay is so brilliant at is to be able to observe all of that and form it into narrative and create opportunities to explore story in a really open way and craft it into something that has a beginning, middle, and end, and feels and explores themes that he's interested in. But so many of us got together, and often it was a real shared experience of Jay would say, I want to run a workshop today about some physicalities around this fire and form it into a dance. And another day, the original Fancy Clown Dean said, I want to explore what these old mime routines looked like at this time and what this character would have done in a show like this. So we would all come together and he would structure that day of workshopping. And so I think my job in those early days was to offer some ideas of things to workshop and play with, but mostly to support. And then for Jay and I to sit together and say, we have all of these ideas, notions, things we've played with. How what do we want to keep? What was useful, but we don't need yet? What's a seed and of idea that you can go write a monologue about? Like who are these characters? And Jay getting to write towards specific performers, which is a real gift, knowing their voice, knowing their, their instincts and being able to play with that. So yeah, I came in right away, but I don't remember, Jay, if you called me and said I'm doing this or how we ended up starting.
Yeah, we had finished working on Daredevil's Hamlet during a summer in between my grad school, getting my MFA in creative writing, and Halena was in grad school.
Yeah.
And the Neo-Futurists, the theater company that originally produced the play, I wrote a pitch for them to pitch it for the season, and I had reached out to Halena from the inception, asking, "Can I put you on this pitch? Here's this idea about a theater burning down. I know I want to tell the story through clown and through all this physicality that we had just worked on in a previous, work with Daredevil's Hamlet." And Halena was right on board. What I remember very early on, Halena, is that Halena sat me down in a very early meeting before I even had, any type of drafting and script. And she really pulled out of me specific questions of, why are you wanting to tell this story, and what are the themes, what is pulling you into this new work, because it's creating something completely new. So she had these really great jumping off points for me to begin to articulate why I was invested in the story, and even some of the early on shapes of the themes and things that some of them stayed, some of them pulled all the way through, but I remember really early on getting to have that meeting with you, Halena, which was as a playwright, creating new work in collaboration was super helpful in terms of just those first steps of steering the piece. So.
Yeah, it's so lucky to work with someone you've already made things with in different forms. I think about other new play development processes, and this one, there's an organicness to that conversation and to knowing each other. And it's similar to working with the performers. It's just there's an ease to all of that. And there was drama and it was hard, but the hardness of it there was joy in the making of it. And I think that's one thing I'm most proud of in the product that emerges as we continue making and refining it. It's a real pleasure. We always ask, are we getting together again to work on this because someone asked us to, or what are we doing? And at this point, it really feels like a celebration of collaboration, of friendship, and of history that is spiritual for me. And that comes from those beginning moments of the seed of the idea and how the play was built.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it certainly exudes that. I've seen this show many, many years before I approached Jay and to begin a conversation about bringing it to Porchlight. And as someone who is truly a fan of it, that was one of the most palpable components about it, is that you feel that there's joy here, even within this, the great tragedy that it holds too. But not only the joy that the characters feel, but I always felt that camaraderie in terms of the company that pours out because you engage the audience. The audience is automatically a pact with you and now part of the show because they're part of the story. It's something that has been that you really succeeded at. Can I ask you, did you have either one of you or both of you, or how did the physical look of the show evolve and reveal itself? Was it something that you were greatly leaning into photographs or historical elements, or was it something that you just more collectively imagined with your designers?
A lucky thing in this process too, that I know in larger theaters would be a dream, is that the designers were in before the script was finished. Because of a storefront model, you don't need as much lead time because you don't have any money to build anything. So you just don't need as much lead time to send it to the shop. And so some of the central images in the show came from designers, being part of the workshop process and then bringing in images and ideas around the theme. So in a way, I think a lot of the aesthetic of the show is that beautiful thing of with limitation comes some real simplistic beauty that I try to remember when we have access to more. to remind ourselves that it came from this place of, like, costumes early on came from what people could bring from home or borrow. And then like an eye was put on it and it was made specific and beautiful. But it really was early on a scrape it together mentality and a real focus on the resources we do have, what's primary, what's essential in the story that we share.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, Jay, you mentioned that the first production of the show happened with the Neo-Futurists, which is a fairly intimate environment, very close relationship between the actors and the audience. And you have taken the show to other theaters, some slightly larger, some, from what I understand, quite large, playing to a very large audience. And then this performance that we're going to be enjoying from the production you did at Porchlight was in a 218 seat theater. How does that affect the playing of this show that depends so much on audience interaction, literally seeing their eyes when it expands or contracts for you as a performer?
Yeah, luckily, every time we've taken it into a space, we've always prioritized, okay, how are we going to connect with our audience? How do we overcome certain barriers, either like the physical barrier or whatever the unique shape or element of the space is? It has been like such a cool thing to see what's gained and what is maybe lost in each space in terms of size and the shapes. Like, so if we're in a huge space like at the University of Virginia, beautiful, I think three levels of balconies. So the distance there was pretty vast, but we gained a moment where like the beautiful ending of the show reigned the special effects of the pedals for like way longer than we've ever been in a space. And so there have been these magical moments that each theater space offers the show, which for me has been super cool. And then of course Halena would know this, because I completely, like, at some point just turn to Halena and just rely on the expertise of her outside eye and total trust. Because at first, when we went to a new space like the Wit, there were certain elements we had to for sure overcome, even at the Den as well, where we had to introduce new elements of like a stage door, because that's such a crucial moment in the climax of the play, and whether or not we had access to something that looked like that. And Halena would introduce these ideas that served the storytelling and adjusted new elements. I love whenever we can be intimate with an audience. I love when we can turn and reach out and just almost touch that audience. But if we're in a space and so much of the script talks about theater, talks about physical theater, talks about the interaction of theater, and then we've cast the actual audience in such a major role of the storytelling, that we can reach out and touch on all those things kind of no matter what space we're in.
Mm-hmm.
We teched it in like this empty bare stage at North Park University in Chicago one year, and I was sitting there watching a run through and I was like, man, I think we could do this really plain and bare, because it's versatile because it's talking about theater. So I loved it at Porchlight, because every time we spoke a language of the balcony, we could see people in the balcony, and it was still so intimately closer than any other balcony space we'd been in. So there's magic to each space, and maybe that's just a credit of theater buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole show is about like this gorgeous Chicago theater building. So I don't know, there's some magic to theater that comes along and kind of blows on the show too, anywhere we do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's like any obstacle becomes an opportunity. And we're just lucky that we have an ensemble that is really nimble adjusting to space. They're physical performers. And so they know their body and space better than most performers. And they're curious about the audience in a sincere way as performers. They really want to see what the audience is doing and respond to it and be alive in that relationship. And I think that allows us to move to different spaces and find new opportunities for engagement and for jokes always.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's such a, I remember the impact that I had the very first time I saw it was, I mean, and you sometimes experience as an audience member, actors giving you direct address, but I had never experienced this type of direct address, that it really was, I know there's 100 other people there, but I'm literally talking to you. And it was an experience like I had not ever felt, that it wasn't a matter of, and now I'm going over here to make sure everybody else is in. There was such a degree of connection and time taken to go, yes, you are experiencing what you think you're experiencing. I'm talking to you and I am literally channeling Nellie Reed, or channeling you know, the other character, Eddie Foy. It has an incredible impact when you're seeing it live. Of course, this year, so unfortunately, audiences are deprived of being able to see it live. So we're so delighted to be able to bring this record of the show as it was performed on the stage of Porchlight Music Theater in 2019, which was an incredible experience for me, again, to see it in a very opulent environment, as opposed to something that was more skeletal. Which when you pointed or talked about the set, or you talked about things, there were things on that set that were just like the way that they were in the actual show Bluebeard, which was thrilling for me. I'm so excited to bring this show to people. Thank you so much, Jay and Halena, for talking with us a little bit about it. We're so excited to extend the run for audiences and to be part of the history of Burning Bluebeard. Thanks so much for being here with me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's awesome.